Excuse me, I was still muted. Good afternoon, I'm Larry Weiss, and as an officer of Jewish Federation and a wealth advisor myself, I'm pleased to welcome you all to this important webinar. Before we launch into today's main topic, I'd like to share a few words about Jewish Federation. Federation has been pleased to offer a robust calendar of virtual events to inform, entertain, and connect our community during this time of physical distancing. Leadership has been working tirelessly with agency executives who are on the front lines to understand and respond to emergent needs in our community due to the pandemic. To date, Federation has allocated nearly $400,000 to the community for senior meals, PPE, economic support, mental health services, and local food pantries. Federation's Endowment Foundation has committed $350,000 to help address these growing needs, and numerous distributions by donors from their donor-advised funds have provided critical assistance at this time. Needs will undoubtedly continue to grow in the coming months, and Federation will continue this vital work. If you have already made a donation to Federation, thank you very much. If you haven't yet, then today is the day, because every new or increased gift is eligible for a match. And if you're interested in learning about Federation's endowment or donor advised fund program, please let us know. Again, thank you. I'd like to introduce Lainey Goldberg, Executive Director of the New Jersey chapter of the AJA, Association of Jewish Attorneys, who will share the process to receive your CLE credit hour. Lainey?
Thank you. As stated, my name is Lainey Goldberg, and I'm the Interim Executive Director for the Association of Jewish Attorneys. The AJA is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization that's open to all, and the New Jersey chapter serves the interests of Jewish professionals by providing tangible benefits that assist lawyers in their day-to-day practice. This program today is accredited for 1 CLE credit in New Jersey. I will be sending an evaluation form via email to all registered attendees, and we will also be placing a copy of it in the chat room for you to download. During today's presentation, 2 codes will be stated. These codes will need to be entered on the evaluation form and returned to me via email by tomorrow night in order to receive CLE credits. If you'd like more information regarding the AJA, please indicate it on the evaluation form, and I will be back in touch with you. And in addition, you'll be receiving your certificates before the week's end. Thank you.
Thank you, Lainey. And now to the topic at hand. In March, in response to the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government enacted new legislation that will impact retirement and philanthropic planning. Federation is pleased to present Ellen Ogan-Martell, a senior consultant from Elwood Associates, to unpack the implications of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act. Elwood Associates serves as an investment advisor for Federation's Endowment Foundation. Ellen is the practice leader in defined contribution plans with a focus on corporate retirement plans, endowments, foundations, and healthcare institutions. Active in her field, Ellen serves on several boards, including the Women's Investment Professionals. Ellen is happy to take questions. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll make every effort to have them addressed at the conclusion of Ellen's presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to take us through some slides to review the CARES Act and hopefully keep it simple but to the point on how it impacts investors in their retirement space and also in future philanthropic donations. So 1 second here. So as Larry mentioned, the CARES Act, which is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, passed at the end of March. It is the largest piece of bailout legislation in the history of the US. Lots of facets to the CARES Act. I'm going to focus on how it impacts retirement plans and also retirement savings. So this happened quite quickly. There was a lot of anticipation in the retirement plan industry and trying to get ahead of what the legislation might look like and then how it could be implemented. And the gatekeepers within the retirement plan universe or industry are what we refer to as record keepers. Those are the big organizations like a Fidelity, a Vanguard, an Empower, a Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. They tend to be the administrators for the individuals in their retirement plan assets. And why is that important? Because they are the ones that have to implement any legislation and how that impacts the individual retirement saver or retiree. These changes also require specific amendments to large plan documents. So when I say plans, I'm referring to the 401k space, 403b plans, 457 plans, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. But it's not as simple as just flipping a switch. As plan fiduciaries, there has to be vetting of these decisions. And not only that, then plan settlers or the companies have to actually approve these amendments. So it's a lot more complicated. So the quick enactment of the CARES Act was a positive trying to get cash into individuals' hands to help them during this difficult period. But it also put a big backlog in and a lot of scrambling in the industry and trying how to administer this or make it happen. So what is the CARES Act? Oops, sorry. There are 4 key provisions that we're going to cover today. The first is required minimum distributions being waived for 2020. The second is repayment of loans being suspended. So if there are individuals, employees at companies within their 401k plan or their 403b, any type of retirement plan, minus pensions that have taken a loan, they can postpone that repayment and again, hopefully have more cash in their pocket because of that. The third is the amount of a loan that an individual can take out of its retirement plan was increased or the option to increase. And then lastly, something that the industry calls CRDS, coronavirus related distributions. So let's start with RMDs, required minimum distributions. Those are for retirees. The age was increased to 72, where you have to take a certain amount based on a formula set by the IRS. This provision was waived for 2020, meaning, again, individuals could keep that money not only in their accounts in the markets and accessible to them for maybe discretionary needs, but it also was a positive where individuals, retirees, did not have to take money out of their accounts during one of the biggest drops in the stock market that we've seen. March was a very difficult month. We have seen this provision passed back in 2009 in response to another economic stressor. And one of the nuances of the waiving of the RMDs, if you were supposed to take your RMD in 2019, you have the first quarter essentially to take it in 2020. If you hadn't taken it yet for 19, you didn't have to. Unfortunately, if you already took it, there was no recourse. You already took it. You can't put it back. One distinguishing feature is the fact that this does not include pension plans. It's only for the plans listed here for individual retirement accounts as well, so IRAs, but your corporate 401k, 403b, nonprofit, and 457 plans. Now moving into affected individual. The next 3 features of CARES Act that we're going to cover are applicable to someone who is deemed an affected individual. And the basics of that diagnosis, if you will, is listed here. You have to have been exposed and diagnosed by a CDC test to be positive for COVID-19. You can have a spouse or a dependent who's been diagnosed, or you can experience some adverse financial consequences as a result of coronavirus. That would be deemed something as being furloughed from work, or you couldn't get to work due to transportation issues. Another issue was if you don't have childcare and therefore you can't work. So the positive of all of this is that from putting back on your hat of a plan fiduciary or a settler of the plan, the company that actually runs the plan or the nonprofit, the big fiduciary concern was, how am I going to be able to look at all of my employees or ex-employees that are in my retirement plan, track these people, and have them confirm that they're truly an affected individual. And the CARES Act says you do not have to, that the participants are self-regulating, and self-regulating where they do not have to provide confirmation. It's up to them. And that put a lot of relief on plan sponsors who are in charge of running retirement plans. So loan repayment delay. Back to, this is for infected individuals, and this is putting a pause on the required payment the individual has taken of the loan out of their retirement plan. So not every plan allows an individual to take a loan. So first, the plan sponsor of the retirement plan has to look at their provisions to see what is allowable today. And then secondly, does the plan, if loans are offered, want to allow that extension? The record keepers, I mentioned them early on because being the gatekeeper and the plan administrator, everyone was handling things differently. Some just flipped the switch and turned things on. Others required detailed paperwork and having authorized trustees sign off on some of these decisions. So it was a lot of work for each plan to decide, how am I going to help my people, or do I really see this as a help? I can tell you some of the larger record keepers, again, like a Fidelity or a Vanguard, just opted this in, turned it on, and said, if somebody really does want to delay their feature, the information's there, they can proactively reach out and ask for that delay. Where others made the choice to really proactively go out to their employees and say, hey, listen, if you have a loan, you can stop payment just for this short window. So it's only between March 27th till the end of 2020, December 31st. You can delay that repayment and of the loan from that period. However, the loan, you're not getting off the hook. You will actually be just re-amortizing your loan at the end of the period, and the duration of the loan may extend the amount of period that you delayed that repayment. So it's just a reprieve, trying to keep cash in individuals' pockets, depending on whatever financial burden that they're going through at this point in time due to COVID-19. The loan increase amount, by law right now, qualified retirement defined contribution plans, in the middle of the page, the normal loan amount is 50% of the participant's vested account balance. So if an employee has $100,000 in saved in their retirement account, they could only take half of that, or $50,000. That's the max, whichever is the lesser of the 50,000 or half. And the purpose of this law historically is your legislation. You don't want an individual using their retirement account as their ATM. You really want someone to think long and hard before dipping into their retirement savings, because that should be the last stop. Understanding the unique time that COVID-19 has caused on the overall economic situation, CARES Act allows the plan sponsor to increase that loan amount to 100% of the individual's vested account balance, or the max of 100,000, which is really a pretty big jump if you think about it. And we'll look ahead to see, when talking to Elwood's clients and just industry-wide, several calls of how should we approach CARES Act when rolling it out to retirement plans. This provision really did give people pause. And it goes back to the theory of, you don't want the gates to be open and people just taking money out if they need it or not. And a good reason would be because thinking back to the March markets with everything selling off, there is fear, there is panic. Even if you are an affected individual, which is a requirement, you could just be taking money out of fear and not necessarily need. And you did it at the wrong time. And as we know, the stock market has come back quite significantly. So the education is very important to tell individuals, think about the big picture and try and stay the course. This is also a very short-term feature of CARES Act. If you're getting the theme here, this is all temporary, just trying to help the individuals access cash where they can. So if they're out of work, they do have some relief in addition to other government programs or other portions of CARES Act. So it's only available for 180 days. Loans issued from March 27th to September 23rd. And that plan administrator or the record keeper is for the loan applications and making sure that participants that are requesting this information or requesting the loan is within the parameters of what plan sponsors have decided is right for their retirement plan. Now, CRDs or corona-related distributions. This was a big one, and this is the one that I think had the most focus when you think about, when we'll look at some statistics here. You really are restricted from how you can take or tap into your qualified retirement savings accounts. And I'm a broken record here, but it goes back to, it's there for retirement. It's not there to help you with your day-to-day. This being such a unique situation, corona-related distributions allow the individual to take up to $100,000 out of their account. And the accounts listed here are IRAs, 401k, 401a, 403b. So quite a long list of the type of qualified plans. And that's the case for all these provisions, not pension plans. And you can have to take these, you can take these distributions within the 2020 calendar year. Now, why is this a big deal? Some of the provisions make it a lot more seamless for the individuals to take their money out. There is no mandatory 20% federal tax withholding that's typically required if you're below retirement age. And the 10% penalty if you take this money before retirement age is also waived. So it really is making it easier for the individual to tap into their retirement assets. If an individual does take the CRD, they do have to pay back the taxes. And that is stretched out over a 3-year period. And it's considered, when it is paid back, almost a roll back in when you start to not only pay taxes, but you can also pay it back to yourself over that 3-year period. So it does give the participant, and I say participant, that's a current employee within a qualified retirement plan, it gives them options where if this is a temporary setback, they are not going to be penalized by tapping into this money. And they will actually, hopefully at the end, make themselves whole and really refocus back on saving and retirement. It's the compassion of, if you're in a situation right now where you have no other means and some of the other relief is in covering your family expenses, you do have some options. So the question that Elwood has dealt with and the industry, a little more background on Elwood. We consult over 70 billion in institutional assets. And of those, 45 billion are retirement plans. And we work with all of the record keepers out there, all the major ones, the Fidelity, Vanguard, Empower, Bank of America, Charles Schwab. I can go down the list. But the overall theme in prepping for how this was going to be rolled out to individual retirement savings accounts and to qualified retirement plans was the messaging and what's right. And there definitely was a pause on, we really are unsure if we want to turn on all of these features for the fear that individuals would just take their retirement balances because they could, because they were fearful of the unknown, This was early on. March 27th was pretty close to the bottom of the sell-off of the stock market. Not much view going forward where we'd wind up with coronavirus. So the thoughtful partnership between those record keepers and plan sponsors was very evident. And I'm bringing up these record keepers because they're the website that the individual goes to log into their account. They're the app that the individual uses on their phone. They are truly the gatekeeper and the overall set the tone and messaging for the individual. So having that key partnership and thinking again as a corporate or nonprofit, you're the plan sponsor. You want to make sure the messaging lines up with your mission and your goal, and that the message is positive. So here we look at some very interesting statistics, and these are from Fidelity. And the reason we're showing Fidelity, they are the largest record keeper. So they have approximately 25 million individual retirees, or I should say retirement savers, on their overall technology platform. So that's a very significant sample size. And they're working with some of the larger corporate nonprofit retirement plans. So having such a large pool of individual savers, we can look to see what did plan sponsors decide to do with their retirement plan? And then secondly, what are the individuals doing now that we're here in June, almost a full 3 months since CARES Act has been passed? So the pie charts here show you the plan sponsor decision. And the plan sponsor decision overwhelmingly was to allow for the CARES Act distribution. So that's that $100,000 without any tax penalties, the ability of the individual to pay themselves back over 3 years or pay the taxes over a 3-year extended period. 97% of plan sponsors opted to adopt this provision. The second was a little more controversial, having loans up to $100,000 or 100% of the participant's account balance. Only it's a split, half and half. And it really, if you start to do the attribution into these numbers, it really did depend on what industry you were in. You would see some bifurcation. For example, healthcare or nonprofit, you saw a higher amount of adoption of offering loans. But in totality, the general population, all 25 million individual retirement savers, and looking at all plan sponsors across the board, it turned out to be a split. So again, from an Elwood standpoint, it was every client had to look at what was right for their population. So it was pretty mixed across our client base, and several did opt out and said, nope, we don't want to do this. We think it's to the detriment of our employees, where others had the view of saying, who are we to say what economic situation our employees may be in? Let's just at least give them the option so that they're not feeling any financial stress. And human resources departments have been working overdrive to track not only the wellness of the employee base, the work from home situation, but on top of it, what are they doing with retirement plans and how are people behaving and are they doing the right thing? And a few clients who decided not to offer loans at this point doesn't mean they could not change their mind. And that's where, again, human resources departments have been saying, let's track our call volume. Let's see if we're getting individual inquiries from our employees. And if we start to see that uptick, then we can in the future turn this on. So 50-50, again, a little surprising on the total population, but a lot of reasons behind that. The deferment of loan payments, again, split. Very similar to all my comments that I just made on having the increase in loan capabilities. The view was, if people aren't asking and we can keep them on track, let's just keep it where it is. But very different when you look at the individual sectors in the overall economy. So let's go to see what individuals are actually doing with these provisions. So for the plans that do allow CRDs, This is again data from Fidelity. Very consistent though. What we do at Elwood, we're not just talking to Fidelity, and this is not a plug for that company. We are talking to all of these record keepers. We approach our review of record keepers just as significant as looking at some investment options. They're the partner with the plan sponsor that's offering the qualified plan. And the response uniformly has been very similar across the industry. Not many people are using these features for the CARES Act related distribution activity. So in this scenario, of the 25 million, now keeping in account 97% of the plans are offering this. And that, again, is the same across the industry. If we do look at the Voyas, the Vanguards, the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch's record-keeping platforms, about 300,000 have taken CRDs, and this is just for the month of May. That represents 1% of participants in retirement plans. So it may seem like a lot, but the news is actually more positive. People are not in that dire of straits that they're rushing to tap into their retirement plans. And that is a really good message considering the overall picture and even, you know, the overall goal of the Jewish Federation here, that we want people to still donate and think about their charities. This pressure is not only on the individual home and family, it is also on the nonprofit world pretty significantly. So some of these numbers line up to say, hey, it's not as bad as we thought. I know there are some really bad situations out there. I'm not trying to make light of that, but taking a step back and looking at the big picture of the total retirement industry, it's surprising how little individuals are using some of these features. So the distributions in the month of May did total 4 billion, but the average distribution amount was 12,500 and the median was 5,000. Only 6,300 of the 295,000 took the full 100,000 distribution. That was the big worry or sigh of relief by plan sponsors, that this was not a rush and just take our money out. We're so fearful. So that was really good news. It's also a testimony to these record keepers and their messaging to participants. They have been taking calls at Volume Records at their call centers. They have been churning out excellent information on what's going on in the markets, what's going on with coronavirus, and the long-term message is stay the course, trying to squash any fears or concerns, and think about the big picture long-term, not only for their retirement planning, but from an overall economic standpoint. So very low, even though 97% of plans are offering this, very low uptick by participants. Oops. Turning to loans, similar message here, that the participants that went to take a higher loan because they could, and those that wanted to defer low payment, the good news was 17,500 participants took that loan that had an increased amount. Their company or nonprofit allowed them to take a little bit more, but the average loan still remained at 16,500 and the median at 6,600. Some of that could be a function of they don't have high account balances. So I'm not going to say they're being prudent. That's not necessarily the whole message here. But the good news, again, is the numbers aren't as extreme as was the worry. Loan deferments, they still have to pay it. They can just kick the can down the road. Just in 1 month, 90,000 individuals said, let's put a pause on my loan payment. And but on a total of the loans outstanding, it's 2%. So not an overwhelming shock here, but just good data overall that the messaging is working and people are looking longer term. So I'm going to make some summary comments here, and I see some questions are lighting up, but record keepers are that base point for retirement savers. be it in your company plan sponsored retirement vehicle or your individual IRA. It does not include pension plan, but there was a lot of work to confirm, number one, what did the plan sponsor want to do, and be that the nonprofit or the corporate office. That was a big decision requiring plan amendments. And those plan amendments don't have to go into place to 2022 for corporations and 2024 for government plans. The implementation of CARES Act provisions all rested on the shoulder of the record keepers. But being plan fiduciaries, I know plan sponsors were very cognizant of the messaging that was going out to their employees and former employees and retirees, and wanting to make sure that the plan provisions were articulated in a positive manner, but with a lot of information so they could make the right choice for themselves and their families. So that communication was very key. And communication now is so robust from website to your phone. I mean, apps are really targeting communications to the individuals that are saving for retirement. Fees. So as plan fiduciaries and even individuals in your IRA, you normally have to pay a fee when you take distributions or loans out of your retirement accounts. And the record keepers industry-wide, many of them said, we will waive CARES Act fees. So a typical fee to take a loan, for example, in a 401k plan could be $50 to take the loan, and then an annual maintenance fee of $50 going forward. Just waiving those simple fees, or an ACH fee. So that was a very positive message from the industry to retirement savers that if you do need this money, we're not trying to gouge you on the way out. This is relief, and that's what it's here for.
Ellen?
So,
sorry, I just want to say the code. The code is summer.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, just repeating, the code is summer.
The code is summer. And should I say so I'll just wrap up here. So the message to participants is really stay the course if you can. If you cannot, just take what you need. Don't take it all. And these record keepers or plan administrators, their call centers are open. They're able to, the length of the calls went up dramatically. The volume of calls for asking for help went up dramatically. Individual communications targeting coronavirus, not only CARES Act relief, but what it was doing to the overall markets was quite significant, and it was working. And so the brief numbers I shared with you, I hope just show you a snapshot of the bigger picture of the retirement savings industry, what we're seeing individuals do as a collective, knowing there will be individuals who have a completely different story. But the best we can do is look at the industry and then look at your own plan. If you're responsible, or work with clients that are responsible for their plan, what are they seeing their employees do? What questions are they getting internally? And how can they help guide by offering the relief, but also making people feel confident and staying the course with their retirement savings? It has certainly helped since March. The stock market globally has bounced back. As of last night's close, the US stock market is slightly negative. The S&P 500 as of last night's close was down about a little less than 3% year to date. But going back to March, where it was down 20%, it's a very significant recovery. So that has helped. In the markets, we're also seeing a pretty big bifurcation between growth investing and value investing. So there are some areas of positive rates of return still within the overall global stock market. And with interest rates so historically low, bonds are positive. So that helps. In the eye of the storm in March, with CARES Act being passed, it was a flurry to make sure the messaging was consistent and to keep people on track, but to also give them the advice and help they needed on their individual circumstances. So maybe now I'll say the other code is CARES Act. And I will stop there, Josh, and open it up for questions.
Larry's just coming on to ask the questions.
I'm coming back. Okay. Am I unmuted? Yes, I am. So let's talk about the RMD parameters. Is there anything that anybody has to do in particular to defer or not to take the RMD, or do they just not take it?
They just don't take it. All these I'm calling them record keepers, but if you have an IRA, it's the same. It's just an automatic. They know that it is not required.
Okay. And with that, I know it's early in the year, but are you getting any feel for the level or the number of participants in retirement accounts who aren't taking RMDs?
We haven't gotten any specific statistics on it yet. I will tell you though, the major plan administrators basically just said they weren't even going to send notices. It was don't take it unless you need it. So I would anticipate, and right now this is just a educated guess, that we will see several people pause and not take it, and not necessarily because we don't need the money, but also more of those early down dips in the market, and why sell out on a really negative market and lock in those losses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I've seen from my practice, and I'm curious to know if it's happening elsewhere, is a fair amount of people who have IRAs who don't need the RMDs, but they take them because they have to, are now looking at it this year as perhaps just a philanthropic opportunity. Are you seeing anything like that? Or can you speak to that opportunity there?
That's definitely an opportunity, and from a tax advantage, rolling it into a charitable annuity account, where then you can, right from the IRA, then go make your charitable donations. For exact statistics, I think it's too early to give you the number, Larry, because it's what are the individuals deciding, and then the next step will be how do we track to see where are they donating.
Okay. Sure. Somebody was asking with regard to CRDs, does that also include inherited IRAs?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing it does not include are traditional pension plans.
Okay, fine. Can you speak to also any changes that allows taxpayers regarding their tax deductions as far as moving money to charities? I know there were some changes in 2017 and then again last year. Anything
Right.
that you do along those lines?
From a taxpayer, I'm not comfortable commenting, Larry, because we don't do any tax planning, and that's not really our focus. It's more on the institutional plan design and what to implement.
Right.
So I would just say, talk to someone like you and get that expert advice. But yes, there definitely are ways to, you can take some benefits. I mean, one simple one is if you go from an IRA, you don't want to pay taxes on a withdrawal and then make a charitable donation. You can move it to a charitable trust account and then make your donations directly from there. And all the record keepers I was mentioning, all the big names, they all have those type of accounts. So you could have your 403B plan, your IRA, your 401k at a Bank of America Merrill Lynch and open a charitable trust and just do the roll right into it and then make your charitable donations. And the technology has just made things so much easier on the donation standpoint, because you can just do the ACH and pull up, I want to take this money out of my account, and look up your charity. And if it's not in their system, you can just get the tax ID number and put it in, and you're off you go. So it's pretty seamless.
Right. Sure. Makes a lot of sense. So obviously there wasn't a high percentage of people who took loans, which is great. And the loan amounts were fairly low. So do we have any data as to whether or not that is slowing down?
So we didn't want to overwhelm you with a ton of data. I mean, we're data people. Took a lot just to get our presentation not too wordy. You know, if you do look at nonprofits, it is a different picture. The nonprofit world, a lot more plans of retirement plans are offering loans. It's closer to 85%. So the total population is 50-50, but nonprofit, just it's hit harder. You know, you're not getting the donations. People, I think, are just waiting to see. And now with the markets coming back and a little more clarity and things reopening, you know, hopefully we'll see a little more of an uptick. But in the nonprofit space, 85% of plans do offer loans, and people were taking them. You know, lower account balances, that number, just to caveat statistics, when I said it's the loan number is low, well, most people don't have a high balance.
Right, right.
So if they had a high balance, they could have taken more, but they just didn't.
But they did.
Yeah. And the healthcare sector is also one that's been hit harder, where most of those plans are offering loans and people are taking them. And it's somewhat counterintuitive, because you would think healthcare is, you know, the front lines. They're the ones that are the heroes we cheer for. But if anything is elective, they've been sitting at home.
Right.
So that sector has really been bifurcated by some people not working, and you know, you student loans or other situations. So those two sectors are a little different than the whole population.
Right. Sure. I'm going to throw it out to see if anybody else wants to put any questions in for us. Please, you know, use the Q&A tab. And if we don't, then I'm going to thank you, Ellen, for a very informative and interesting presentation. I mean, you covered it thoroughly and clearly, and there's many, you know, nuances in the CARES Act, and I took away some valuable information. And you know, this may be only about my 25th CARES Act, you know, discussion in the last few months. But I want to thank all the participants for dialing in today. You know, and we hope you continue to participate in our calendar. It's quite robust, developed by Federation. And, you know, if you're an attorney and you want to obtain the CLE credits for today's program, please be sure to complete the AJA post-program survey. And thank you to AJA for sponsoring the CLE credit hour. Just one other thing here. I just had an extra inning question come in here. Someone was asking, are they correct in understanding that plan sponsors had the option of whether or not to offer all of the provisions of the CARES Act? And any idea how the distribution amounts compared to a typical year?
So the provisions, it depends. That's a great question. It was dependent upon where your account is. So everyone handled it slightly different. I'll give you an example. Vanguard, RMDs were pretty universal. Everyone just said, you don't have to take it, and made that communication very, very succinctly. The extension or deferment of the loan payment, some record keepers like a Vanguard just said it's there and we're not going to make you sign any paperwork. And they put it out there. If a participant looked into it and had a question, or an IRA holder and asked the question, they'd be told at the call center they could defer. The loan increase and the CRDs, those definitely across the board were an active election. You as a plan sponsor, or you would have to say, we have to turn that on. And that's back to my point. It's a plan amendment, which is a pretty big deal when you're talking qualified retirement plans. How they came about it was interesting. Fidelity, for example, said, if you don't opt out by this date, we're going to assume you want it on. And a negative election, in other words. And what do we know? If people aren't reading all their emails or all the legal jargon, I know we had clients who said, oh, wait, I missed the due date. And, oh, I guess we're offering it now. Where others' views were that was not very ERISA prudent, and they wanted to have the conversation with their plan sponsors and have them sign a paper saying they proactively are adding it. So the increase of loans and the CRDs, those most definitely universally were a proactive election. It depended where your account is for the deferment of loan payment.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, finally, for everybody, if you have any additional questions about Federation's endowment program, legacy giving, or donor advised funds, please reach out and contact Robin Rockland. And again, thank you again to everybody. Thank you, Ellen. Have a good day, and everybody stay safe. Bye.
Thank you.